I wish that I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't.
Sand hurts my feelings.
I don't like sand.
Hurts my feelings.
Haunted by thick sand in my very soul. Sand. Are you suffering as much as I am?
Sand hurts my feelings.
Tormenting me. I'm in agony.
Sand hurts my feelings.
I don't like sand.
Hello and welcome to The Sand Hurts My Feelings. I am your host, Alex.
And I am your other host, Sarah.
And we are so excited to be doing our pilot episode of The Sand Hurts My Feelings. This is our combination Star Wars and Taylor Swift podcast. Sarah and I are so excited to talk about this. We have been chomping at the bit, waiting to get this out. And it is just so exciting. We are super excited about it. And I hope this comes through and it does not turn you off because we are just so excited to talk about Taylor Swift and Star Wars.
Yes. For those of you who are new to us, Alex and I host another podcast called Feeling the Force, looking at Star Wars through the core emotions. So kind of think Inside Out, but with Star Wars. And this is something that we've been talking about now for, I don't know, several months.
It's been close to a year.
Yeah, it's something that combines both of our loves. We've been thinking about, do we want to try to tie it into Feeling the Force as kind of bonus episodes? And we felt, to do it the justice and to have the conversations that we want to have a totally separate space for that. So if you're new to us as podcasters, welcome. Go check out our other podcast, Feeling the Force. But if you're here just for Taylor Swift, I can't say I don't blame you. We're Star Wars and we're Taylor Swift.
Also, if you're here for just shorter podcasts, because I will fully acknowledge that our other podcast goes for at minimum an hour. I think our shortest episode is 55 minutes. But with this one, we're hoping to make it a little bit shorter, a little bit more digestible, and to have it be just kind of an easier, like, hey, let's slot this in on the drive to work or something like that. So it will not be as long as that, because we'll only be talking about one character and 2 songs at most. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll become the longest podcast we've ever had because we just have so much to talk about. But
because we get so excited and go on tangents. But to kind of set us up for the podcast, and then we'll kind of go further into set us up for our first season of the podcast. Alex, let's talk a little bit about how we got into Star Wars and how we got into Taylor Swift.
Sounds great.
Let's start with Star Wars. So how did you first get introduced to Star Wars, Alex?
I was first introduced to Star Wars on the original VHS cassette or VHS tapes, which a lot of people probably don't know what those are anymore, but they're showing my age. But just before the 1996 special editions were released, they released the last version of the original trilogy on VHS, and it literally and as I'm processing this now, like on the VHS, they say like, hey, buy the VHS and buy the original trilogy one last time. Like they say it in the ad. So I'm now just putting that together of like, oh my gosh, they were actually right, because we're not getting the originals anymore, the non-specialized editions. But that's what I was introduced on. I wouldn't say my family is super into Star Wars. It was more of just like it was there. My parents bought it, and I don't even know if my brother wanted it or not, because my brother's a little bit older than I am. But it was just in the house, and so I just grew up with that. My brother got super into Star Wars. I got super into Star Wars, and Star Wars has become kind of the thing, especially when we had nothing after, I would say, even Revenge of the Sith. There was that gap, and that huge gap of nothing, and leading up to that, that's all I read was the Star Wars extended universe. Like, and that's kind of, honestly, I will say, like, that is still kind of all I read. Is I find it's hard for me to find books that I'm like, I'm interested in this book, and to read books outside of that. I'm just like, I go into Star Wars and I can read a Star Wars book and I can be like, this is a good or a bad book, but I'm just like, I'm interested in that story. But I will say that was helpful for me because I came in and I started reading when I was in my teens. Like, because of the extended universe, there was so much already there.
Right,
And
by the
so
time you
that
were a
by the time
teenager,
I was
yeah.
a teen, like there was so much already there. And so I was just like, that's what I wanted to read. And like I can follow the stories of my favorite characters. And that was my introduction. I'm a teacher, if you do not know, and I recently showed my 5th graders Return of the Jedi, and I let them all know, like, when the Rancor came on the screen. I told them, and I distinctly remember I would always hide behind the couch
Mm-hmm.
when the Rancor came on because I was afraid of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scary thing. And I was like, yep, when I was your guys' age, because they're all like 10, 11, 12, and I was like, when I was your guys' age, I would hide behind the couch. And because I'd be afraid of the Rancor, and they're all just like, "This is ridiculous. What are you talking about? This is scary." And I'm just like, "Nope, this is scary. I don't know what you're talking about." They're like, "This isn't. This is ridiculous." So like that tells you where I'm coming from. And so the original trilogy will always have a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I distinctly remember throughout high school the theories of like, oh yeah, George has 7, 8, 9 all written out, and it's gonna come and it's gonna be all about Gina and Jason Solo and all that jazz. And I'm just like, yep, okay. And I theorized about it, but yeah, that never happened and never was ever gonna happen. But so yes, that is my coming. I will say for everybody listening, I was too late to the boat on Clone Wars. I also didn't have cable, so I was not able to watch it as it came out. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first time I watched it was probably like middle to late college, and it was not my cup of tea because I don't think it was aimed at me. And like because like as a 20-year-old, I'm just like I don't identify and don't understand this a lot. So that one was a struggle for me. But I did watch Rebels later on at like even later in life, and I loved that. So that one I will say I loved Rebels, but Clone Wars in particular, like I know a lot of people are like, this is quintessential Star Wars. If you want it to be, sure, but like I don't get a lot of joy out of Clone Wars. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the benefit. That is our thing about this podcast, especially Star Wars is for everyone, and there's so much of it out there. It's not like if you don't like something, that's fine, and don't like it, but like don't yuck on anybody's yum. So
Right.
I do not. I know because I know Sarah enjoys Clone Wars.
I do.
And so I'm like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, you're a terrible fan because you like Clone Wars. It is, I'm
Thank
just
you.
like, because I'm like, it's that's just it, I can look at it and go, that was not my that I did not get Clone Wars when it was supposed to come to me or anything
Right.
like
You
that.
were
It's
not
just
the target demographic when you were watching in your early to mid 20s.
also it was built up a lot to me by my cousin who was the good demographic who had seen a lot of it, and he was just like, it's so amazing, it's so amazing. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, it's okay, it's not as
Mm-hmm.
amazing as he was as that I felt he was making it out to be. So
Right.
but
But
there's no yucking any yum here. we
no.
we will the only yucking we will do is if you yuck somebody else. So if I will fully, so like if you hate because we will talk about things and we'll get on tangents about how we like certain things or don't like certain things, but like we will call out the toxic fandom that is the Star Wars universe
Well, and the
often,
Swifties
and
too.
and Swifties as well. We will call out
Yeah.
Swifties as well because there is toxicity in that in those both fandoms. So we're gonna
Unfortunately.
try to be a positive location for
Yeah.
both of those fandoms to come together
Absolutely.
and enjoy the just happiness that is Star Wars and Taylor Swift and just love it together. So that is my connection to Star Wars. How about you, Sarah? How did you get connected? I know you were later than life. Oh, also everybody, Sarah and I are married, so I don't know if you know that or not. Just to give you a
That is such a
prefix.
random throw in.
Well, they gotta know. They should
They
know.
do.
Like
They
it's
do.
we should know that we're not just friends. We're not just random people coming together because there's big things here. So continue. Apologies.
That's okay. That I figured it would come up eventually, just as a very random spot to throw it in. So my journey to Star Wars was fairly deliberate on my end. I mean, it's inevitable we're going to date ourselves with how things are. So to date myself, I sat down and watched at the time all 6 movies that had came out. Revenge of the Sith had just been released on DVD, VHS, and I'm like, okay, these are all the Star Wars. I'm going to sit down and watch them all because I didn't really have an interest prior to that, but they all came out, and I was at an age where I'm like, I'm kind of interested in this. There were some people in my life that were big Star Wars fans, and I'm like, okay, I am curious as to what this is all about. And I didn't expect to fall in love with it, but it was pretty much love at first sight. Um, and that was when I was in junior high school. And this is where I kind of want to go back and like talk some sense into young Sarah, because that was when the Clone Wars was coming out on Cartoon Network in real time. And I could have watched it, but I didn't because I was very much like a purist. And I'm like, this is dumb cartoon animation. And who the heck is Ahsoka Tano? And Anakin never had a Padawan and was like very uppity about it. It was not great. So, like, I don't want to say I regret that because it's what I wanted at the time, but looking back, I'm like, I could have like been living that heyday. But we all come to our paths in our own ways, and like it is what it is.
You wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't experienced it the way you did. Again,
No,
the Force
exactly.
works in mysterious ways.
No, exactly. So it might not have hit right. Who knows? But I watched that and was kind of growing in my fandom, but not really sure like where to dive in further because I will say as a younger female coming into the Star Wars universe, I felt fairly gate kept of like, I don't even know where to begin with the extended universe. I haven't been a fan since the beginning because I wasn't even a thought in 1977.
Yep.
And so I was actually really, really glad when Disney purchased Lucasfilm and kind of cleaned slate and said, we're going to have a whole bunch of new content. Here's new books that are all canon. And it gave me an entry point. And I know that upset a lot of fans, and there's some really good stuff in the EU. I've gone back and read some, like the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire trilogy in the EU is chef's kiss phenomenal. But when Disney purchased Lucasfilm, it really enabled me to fully embrace Star Wars of like Star Wars is for everybody. I know where I can come in at. And so that kind of accelerated my fandom to the point where now Alex and I met over Star Wars. He's already mentioned that we are married. Our first kind of connection as we were getting to know each other was over Star Wars. And now we're having 2 Star Wars themed podcasts. And so that is where I am. I enjoy Clone Wars. Again, I didn't watch it as it was coming out, but I enjoyed Clone Wars. Rebels was a little bit closer to me watching it as it was airing in real time on TV. There was kind of some weird overlap with the seasons, but love, love, love Rebels. Resistance was not quite my jam. There's some cute moments in Resistance, but yeah, Star Wars is great.
This tells you how 2 people kind of different ideas in Star Wars can live together and actually get married and love each other, because I was quite upset when they got rid of
All the
the
EU.
EU, and or not got rid of, but like they stopped the story because I was very
Right.
invested and I wanted them to continue the story, and like, again, I can logically look at it and I can go, I understand why they did this, but it's still slightly frustrating to me because I want to know what happens to Gina and Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Ben Skywalker, who is Luke Skywalker's son. But like, I want to know that, but that's never going to happen. But there's still so much EU that I haven't, Legends, I guess, EU that I haven't read, that I'm still, again, there's so much of it I'm still interested in and looking into, and I have a lot more that I can get out of. But yeah, like, this is where we can both be fine and we can be accommodating and caring, and it's not the end of the world that we both disagree on this topic.
Right, because there's so much of Star Wars to love. And especially now that we're getting so much content, and even before we were getting so much content, because you still had several different authors writing in the EU, and so you're getting different storytelling perspectives, and that each brings something new and exciting and interesting to the table, but that just may not resonate with you because of your experiences.
Oh no, and I will fully say, like, I do enjoy the Disney stories that have been coming out.
Sure,
Like, I've
sure.
enjoyed those. It's more of just like I wanted more of that. And so
No.
it's I wanted that to continue, or at least to finish the story, because it was kind of left off as a, oh no, what's going to happen? And then
And then they just
like, yep, Disney bought it. But anyway, fantastic. That is our wonderful Star Wars. Yes, we met basically over Star Wars.
We did.
That was Sarah's first interaction and I talking about Star Wars.
Our whole
And
first date was pretty much talking about The Last Jedi.
well, that was the first date, and your my dating profile was like, I love Star Wars a little too much, and your first question was, what's loving it a little too much?
Like there's no such thing.
Like that's it. So that was a sign of, I was just like, I love it a little too much, because I was trying to be like, oh yeah, like I like it a lot, so be prepared. And you're just like, what does that mean? You like it. That's what Star Wars is. So,
Yes.
So that's again why that worked out well for us. But moving along, fantastic. That is our first Star Wars interaction. But now we can shift into our Taylor Swift introductions, because I can fully say that I have been a Swiftie almost for the run. I can't say distinctively that I have been from the beginning of the first album, but like I heard her first album. I did not buy it right away because I did not know a ton about it, and also like I will fairly say I was a penny pincher teenager and was trying to figure things out. So the first
fair.
album I did buy from release was Fearless, but I did one of my best purchases is I bought these, because I became such a fan of hers, and I became like, cause I think I had bought Fearless, and then I'd bought Speak Now, and it started to build up I now bought every album as it came out. I still didn't have debut, and so I knew my cousin, different cousin, but I knew my cousin had bought the debut album, and I knew she wasn't as big of a fan, because at the time Taylor was a big country. She was super into country. And so I actually bought the album off of my cousin for $5.
Nice.
So like that was before she became super big. And so shout out to Piper. She has done our podcast art, and it is really good. So this is our little shout out back to Piper of, hey, you get your artwork in our podcast, and then that connection. But so yeah, she's really talented in artwork and stuff like that. But yeah, Taylor was not as much of her jam, and it became massively mine. I have been to 3 concerts of hers. I've been to 1989 was my first concert. I still kick myself because I had a chance to go to Red, and I again was in college at the time and thought that $100 was too much.
I mean, it is, especially on a college budget.
Right, but then like now looking back, I'm just like, oh man, it would have been great. But
Anyway.
so anyway, I went to 1989, I went to Reputation, and then amazingly, Sarah and I both went to the Eras tour. So I've been to 3 amazing concerts of Taylor, and it's been fantastic. And I have actually converted Sarah into a Swiftie. So let's hear Sarah's introduction to Taylor.
Yeah. So had my like best childhood friend growing up, Ween, gotten her way, I would have been a Swiftie since the beginning. I have very distinct memories of Ween trying to get me to listen to Fearless tracks. And she's like, this is like the best song ever. This is the best thing ever. Sarah, how come you don't like this? And I was like, this is too country. I'm not a huge fan of country music. And to me, especially the first album and even Fearless, I'm just like, this is too country twangy for me. I'm not interested.
Debut is very country.
No, and
it is complete country.
And I get that. I was going to say Fearless is definitely country, but it's more country pop than country.
I'd still say it's pretty
You
country.
still say it's pretty country?
Fearless is pretty country. Fearless and Speak Now are still like, she's evolving, but it's still pretty
It's
country.
still pretty country. Either way, so Ween had really tried all throughout high school to get me into Taylor Swift. Sorry, Ween, that didn't work out, but I'm here now, so And kind of over like, I mean, so Taylor evolved as a musician, and I wouldn't say like I actively sought her out, but like if her songs came on the radio, I didn't switch the channel. I was kind of like, this is what it is. And then I met Alex, and he is a very passionate Taylor Swift fan. And I said, well,
Incredibly.
I'm like, I don't know if I've ever sat down and listened. I was like, I know I haven't sat down and listened to an entire one of her albums. Like, I know I've heard songs on the radio. Like, I can identify Taylor Swift songs because of the massive radio play, but I'm like, I don't know if I've ever sat down. So that was part of the first 6 months of us dating was
We
him.
made a deal, though. We made a deal.
Yes.
Explain the deal.
Yes. I was going to sit down and listen to all of the Taylor Swift albums, and Alex was going to give the prequel trilogy another go.
That is not the deal.
That wasn't the deal?
No, the deal was you were going to show me Elton John albums.
Oh, well, we've really not kept up on that one, love.
That is true, but I'm like you said because he has so many. You were like, I'm gonna pick out like 6 albums because she had released like close to 6 albums, and you're like, we're gonna pick out. And I'm gonna pick out the best ones, and then we're gonna exchange albums.
Yeah, well, that really didn't get anywhere, listeners. Like, I know I've introduced Alex to some of Elton John's biggest albums. So Elton John is my first musical love. Like, he is phenomenal, but that's not what this podcast is about. We have some stuff on him for Feeling the Force, so go check that out if you're interested. But yeah, Alex introduced me to Taylor Swift. He sat me down and we listened to the albums, and I think it helped too that within the first year of us dating, she released Lover. And like to get to experience a new album release with Alex, who loves her so much. And he helped me like appreciate her as a lyricist, as a poet, as a songwriter. And so now I love her in my own right. And that was one of the selling points when I was telling my loved ones that I had met a guy, and I was telling Ween that I had met a guy, and she's just kind of like, at first, just kind of like, oh, okay, that's nice. And I said, he's gotten me into Taylor Swift. And there was like a distinct body posture shift in her. And she's like, oh, really? Tell me more. It was very great. So, yes. So, since I have become a Taylor Swift fan, kind of Lover era was where I really got in. And then onward, I was fortunate enough to go to the Eras tour. We got our tickets through the Ticketmaster Nightmare line. We did not purchase them secondhand. I braved that line. I wear that badge. I wear that badge.
Well done.
But yeah, that was an incredible concert. I think Taylor is a brilliant lyricist and songwriter and poet. And the way that her mind layers things it's insane. Like it is a gift. And I think that's one of the reasons, kind of circling back to the podcast, why like there's such content to talk about. I mean, I know there's podcasts out there that are just out there describing her albums and her songs and her lyrics. But to me, like, there's such potential here for that Star Wars crossover.
Well, to me, it's because she's an empath. Like,
Yes.
and that's the thing is like a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, she only writes about boys and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, she writes about boys or whatever the guys, and maybe you can identify in her own relationship the guy that she's writing about there, but the way she connects with everybody is because she's writing more about the feeling
Right.
of that moment of how she
Right.
feels about that guy than that guy themselves. And that's where everybody connects. Like that, like she has such feeling and understanding of how other people feel. Like when people listen to things, like they start crying and stuff like that. I'm like, did you not? And I'm like, I've listened to songs and I've started crying, like Bigger Than the Whole Sky, one of her best ever. And it is because she makes me feel exactly what is going on in that song. And so it's the fact that she can get you to feel exactly what she's feeling in that song is a big connection that I had with her. And so yeah, no, I will fully say it was a struggle for me through college, because again, being with Taylor all the way through, I was a big part of that. I defended her quite a bit with that, like she only writes about boys and she's a serial dater and all that misogynist garbage that's going on and stuff like that. So We are
Right.
we will call that out here. We will talk about that here as well. But there's also misogyny and stuff going on in Star Wars. So I think again it works really well.
Well, misogyny doesn't work really well, but
Correct. The
like,
connection is yes, no. The misogyny is absolutely not okay. But yes, no, it is the connection between and how you can connect the two.
right, the deep feelings. So let's, now that you know quite a bit about both of us and our journeys to these two loves that we have of Star Wars and Taylor Swift, let's talk about the podcast and what this is and how it's going to operate. So to kind of kick us off, we did get this idea from Space Swifties. They're another Star Wars Taylor Swift podcast that's been going on for just over a year. And they've, obviously been talking about Star Wars and Taylor Swift. They've had a really busy year because of the Speak Now dropping, the Eras tour, and now Tortured Poets. They've had a lot of stuff to cover. And their conversations really sparked Alex and me in our conversations. And we're like, well, we want to continue the conversation. We want to do these deep dives into characters and into the lyrics and what does this mean? And so that's where our podcast is going to be focused on one character per season. And how we want to go about it is currently Taylor Swift has 11 studio albums out. We are going to pick one song from each studio album that best describes or best exemplifies or highlights a moment for that character of the season and go in depth with the lyrics and the emotion. And, if there's a specific moment connection in Star Wars, talk about that and to just really explore that emotion. Because, like Alex said, Taylor Swift is an empath and there's so much emotion in Star Wars. I mean, that's our whole other podcast, right? Is Feeling the Force and discussing emotion in Star Wars. And so there's so many things to discuss here. And one of the things I'm most excited for is because, we're two different people. We watch Star Wars differently. We listen to Taylor Swift differently because of our own previous experiences. That, for the same character, we could have no two songs that are alike. And to just have that conversation and what we see and what we hear and what we feel.
Yeah. So yes, we're each going to pick a song that the other does not know, and we're going to discuss them on the podcast as just, hey, this is what I think, and then it's a reaction and not necessarily defense, but a discussion of like, this is why I think this character works and this song works.
Right. Because we're going to preface it here and we'll probably say it in almost every episode, but there's no wrong answers here because we all come from at Star Wars from a different perspective. We all come at Taylor Swift from a different perspective. And then when you bring those two together, we're going to interpret and hear and feel things differently. So, as long as you can say, I think X because Y, like there's no wrong answer. And again, we're not here to harsh on anyone's yums. So there's never going to be, well, that's a dumb pick. That's never going to happen because it's what you feel and how you see those connections taking place.
Correct. And if we build up an audience, which we would love to do because we just enjoy talking about this, but we would love to hear from the fans and whoever's listening, what do you think? And so that we hope
Yes.
to maybe incorporate that as part of the episode if we get enough people or anyone at all to let us know, because we will let you know what is coming next and what album is coming out and what's going to be our next album and what's going to be our next character. So you can respond and let us know, what do you think is the album or the song on this album that fits this character before the episode airs?
Yes, we would love to hear that. And we'll give you socials at the end so you can keep in touch with us and stay active because we want to hear your thoughts. See if they line up with either of Alex's or mine, or, get all of these new exciting perspectives. I kind of don't want to keep our listeners in suspense for too much longer here, but we've already set up the first, well, not, we haven't recorded any episodes in the first season. This is the pilot, but we know where we're going with it. And we figured if we're doing a Star Wars Taylor Swift podcast, Taylor Swift is a pioneer and a leader in her own right, and some of the advocacy that she has done for women in music and for artists in general. And to me, it seemed very fitting that we would explore her music with first through the first woman of Star Wars, and that we're going to be looking at Taylor Swift's music from the perspective or thinking about Princess Leia Organa or General Leia Organa Solo, however you'd like to think of her. But she is going to be the subject of our first season, and I am super excited about that, in part because Leia is one of the few characters that we have from birth to death. So we have her entire life in front of us to be able to explore these lyrics and albums and moments. And I am super excited for that.
Agreed. It's going to be very very interesting. So we will be starting off with Leia Organa Solo, and we will be starting off with Taylor Swift's debut album. So Sarah and I have been working on this for a while, and we will be releasing our episodes soon about Leia and about Taylor Swift's debut. So I know this one was a little bit more of a challenge for Sarah because it was the debut and it is quite country, but
It's songs I have listened to the least out of all of her albums. Yes.
right. But I am super excited to get us going, and it is going to be so much fun to talk about, and we really look forward to anybody else responding or listening or talking to us. And yeah, we'll have a lot of fun with this.
So before we give socials and kind of part ways, Alex, I'm curious how you went about picking your songs for at least the ones that you have kind of picked so far.
So yeah, Sarah and I think went very differently about this. The way I went about picking my songs is I'm still in the process of finding songs and stuff like that. But the way I went through a lot of it, and it's evolving as I'm going through. But as I went through it, I would I would find a character. So Leia, I would find Leia, and then I would basically just go to Google and then look at the lyrics. And so I'd look at the debut album, and then I'd go, all right, what song title immediately calls to Leia? And if the song title calls to it, I'd be like, all right, this works. And so then I'd click, and then I'd look through the lyrics to see if there was a moment that connected with Leia. Because I will say, with my moments, this is not exclusive to the original or to the movie saga. I looked through, I thought about books, I thought about different elements, different pieces, Clone Wars, Rebels, any other place where you can see them. You will see different parts of different characters all over the place. It is not just on the original 9. So that was my process of just kind of like going through, looking at the lyrics. But then I have been listening to songs, just like on repeat or something, or just randomly listening to a Taylor Swift song and thinking about, oh, maybe this one actually works better. So that might be changing thoughts a little bit, but at the moment it's kind of just like I would go through, look, go, hey, this works or this doesn't, and stuff like that.
Okay.
How about you?
So my process is I have been sitting down with one album. So let's say, for example, I sit down with Speak Now and I listen. Well, let's be specific. I sit down with Speak Now Taylor's version and listen to each song. I'll usually try to have the lyrics up on a screen so I can read along too, and think, okay, who in Star Wars does this best exemplify? And so I've been making notes, and I'll usually give an album 1 or 2 listens and kind of sort it out that way. So I would sit down with an album and listen with Leia in mind and think about which songs I felt fit her. And then with most albums, I would usually have a few that could work. So that's where I'm like, there's no wrong answer here because there's multiple. But which one kind of I felt fit the best with Leia.
Okay, cool.
There is one more thing, listeners, is Alex and I are still kind of working out the details, but we decided that in the instance that we do match on a song, we're going to do something special here on the podcast. Because some albums, there's more songs. So the odds of us picking the same song on some albums, varies on the length of it. So we're going to do a little bit of a trivia challenge on the episodes that we match. And we haven't quite figured out what that's going to take shape of and how, but that's something to look forward to is the episodes where we match. We're going to play some fun games.
Fun, fun, fun.
You don't sound super enthused there, Alex. Are you afraid you're going to lose?
I will absolutely not lose. I am just feeling sad for you.
Oh, you think I'm going to be swiftly defeated?
You are in both counts.
Okay. So that'll be something fun to look forward to. And we obviously don't know when that's going to be, but we'll get our trivia prepped and ready for whenever that does come across. Because to me, it's not a matter of if, it's when.
I think it's still a matter of if.
Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe we get to play some trivia, maybe not. And maybe that'll just be fun bonus episodes.
We'll see.
We'll see. But that's who we are. That is The Sand Hurts My Feelings. We are a Star Wars podcast from a Swiftie point of view. And we've got socials.
Our socials, if you want to connect with us through Instagram or Threads, we are at the Sand Hurts My Feelings pod on both Instagram or Threads. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/the Sand Hurts My Feelings podcast. And we also have an email if you want to do old-fashioned email, which we love getting. We are also at email, which is also the Sand Hurts My Feelings pod at gmail.com. We are looking forward to hearing anything from you. We are on all podcasting networks. So please give us a like, comment,
Subscribe.
share, a rating, subscribe, any of those wonderful things. We are super excited to get started with this. We're just super excited about this whole thing.
Yes. I think it's going to be a good time.
All right. And always remember, the sand hurts my feelings.